The battle for the mind of North America will be fought in the video arena. The television screen is the retina of the mind's eye. Therefore, the television screen is part of the physical structure of the brain.
All right, welcome to another episode of The Outer Reels. I'm Jason. With me, as always, is Sam.
What's up? Here we go.
Here we go. This week, my selection, Message from Space.
Episode 18.
Oh, yeah, well, sure, if you want to do that.
1978.
1978, Japanese. Kind of like last week, we've got a Japanese movie with some American actors in it.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly only like, what, 3,
Mm-hmm.
I guess. And then everybody else is Japanese. The dubbing, I got to admit, is pretty good.
It's not bad.
Yeah, it lines up pretty well.
It feels a bit more
seems,
of the time. Like it just feels like what you expect from these movies, you know?
Yeah, but my point with the dubbing is that I think they put a little more effort in trying to line up the words
Right.
with the mouths than they did with what they're actually saying sometimes.
Yeah.
So it gets a little weird at times.
Yeah, this is directed once again by Kinji Fukasaku, and who is fast becoming our Brian Trenchard Smith of Japan.
We'll see. I already picked another one. I'd never checked who the director was. So
Entirely possible.
We'll see what yours is next week.
Speaking of BTS, if you're going to summarize this movie, you get in an elevator and he's there, and it's 1978. So he's coming hot off Stunt Rock, and he is gearing up to do Day of the Assassin. So he's in his A game. How do you sell him this movie?
All right, Brian, let's take Star Wars and merge it with this Japanese cartoon I've seen called Space Battleship Yamato. For Sam.
Of course
props.
you've got. Dude, you're like Carrot Top of podcasts. You're like, here's
you might know it better as Star Blazers.
Wow, good one. Excellent.
So, I hesitate to call this a ripoff because Star Wars is a ripoff of like 6 Japanese movies, but it's definitely heavily inspired by Star Wars, considering it came out only a year later.
Yeah, there's, we've said this before about movies that come out around the same time. Oh, they're just trying to be Star Wars. And again, you have to remember that this movie was being made or worked on and produced before some people saw Star Wars. So you can't just say that the entire thing was just a one-to-one knockoff. Like there's still some stuff here, and
Oh, totally. I honestly think they were probably making this before any of them saw Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
However, by the time they were getting ready to release it, the score is completely derivative. John Williams completely, like, just enough to not be a full-on ripoff. Just enough to not be sued.
There is, because as much as I defend it saying, oh yeah, it's not Star Wars because it was made before, there is quite a big lead up in the end of the third act to trying to access a 10-meter wide exhaust port. So
yes, I know. and that could be that could just be that they both stole that from the same thing.
Yeah.
But again, like the score, some of the character names are obviously, like, you got Hans in there, you have a Maya, not Leia, but Maya.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to give it some kudos. There's some really cool models in this. It's just not shot anywhere near as well as Star Wars was.
This is fun. I like this movie because I like vibrance, and this movie has a lot of vibrance. And clearly, it's lower budget, but it just feels like a movie from the 70s in all the right ways. And it's just enjoyable to sit down and watch because it's fun and it's lighthearted, and it'll never pass this way again. So it's just always nice to watch these movies and just enjoy them for what they were.
Oh, exactly. It's just, as I said, if Star Wars hadn't come out a year before, this would have been fine.
Yeah.
But the visual effects in Star Wars, and don't get me wrong, there is some really cool visual effects.
There is some great stuff.
Some of the laser fire and stuff, that's all very cool.
The models, as you said, the explosions, the fire, the scale of the fire is incredible in the models.
Yeah, especially at the end there with the big ship.
Oh yeah, exactly.
But I liked the effect that they had with the engines on the ships and stuff like that. Like,
The thruster vapor trail stuff is great.
It looked like there was like thrust coming out of those instead of just a light.
Yeah.
It was quite cool. But again, it's obvious these are models, and it's just that just comes down to maybe some of the skills on how to shoot these things better. Just wasn't there yet.
Yeah, I mean, Japan is
they probably hadn't seen Star Wars yet, like we said.
Right, and Japan's the king of props and models at this time. You know, this is like their
Totally.
premium Japanese model builders and props and stuff going in a lot of movies and TV shows. I think if I was going to try and sling this, I'd sort of spice it up if I was trying to pitch it around a room, I'd be like, hey, it's like a ragtag group of like oddball space pirates and dirtbags, and somehow they're collectively summoned by magical glowing walnuts, space walnuts, if you say, and space nuts, and the space walnuts kind of get together this unexpected clash of personalities, and they're getting them together to defeat this guy named Lord Ruxia, and there's an army that he has called the Gavanus, and they're trying to return peace to this planet that was, what's the planet called? Julucia. And basically, Julucia, yeah. And it's just, it's a pretty classic, basic story of, evil ruler trying to take over, and the planet's, natives are trying to fight back in any which way they can. I think it's basically Armageddon, but instead of Earth, take Julucia, and instead of, the oil rig operators, it's kind of like Trojan Baron 1 or like Kamen Rider, like crazy over the top monsters.
Right. And instead of a comet, it's like a bad guy.
It's the Gavano. Yeah, it's
I'm trying to understand.
Let's say it's the first. Okay, so it's basically
Armageddon. I just try to understand why you're trying to take it to Armageddon,
because it's a great movie.
Yeah, well, okay.
But so, I would say because it's the first two acts of Armageddon where they assemble these people and they try and get them together, and they don't,
Yeah, because Armageddon was the first to do that.
It's the best to do that. What should we say? What else is there? Vic Morrow, their leading man in this.
Vic Morrow is in this.
Yeah, he plays General
Probably
Garuda.
was looking for a paycheck at the time, but he's great.
Oh, he's so great in this. He is a very cool character in this. This is, man. Anytime I think about Vic Morrow, you can't think about nothing but Twilight Zone, though.
True, and this is before Twilight Zone.
Well, it has to be, because he's alive.
Well, good point. But
this is what a way to go, man. Have you seen the footage on set of that?
No, I don't need to see
that
stuff.
Because there's this wide shot where you see the helicopter and it's hovering over the water, and when it goes down, it's all on camera. There's a bit of chaos, and then a bunch of stagehands running because the water's really shallow. And you see two stagehands out the back by the helicopter, and one of them is like rifling through the water, like trying to get somebody out, and he picks something up, and as he starts picking it up, you see like the shock in his face, and he freaks out and he just throws it down and runs away. And that's when he realizes it's probably half of Vic Morrow or half of one of the kids.
Oh my God.
It's so shocking. So, because you hear an interview with him much later, and he's just like, yeah, I thought it was a prosthetic. I thought it was like, a puppet or something like that, and start pulling it out. And yeah, oof, it's pretty bad. That was also,
I don't need that.
There's some wild stuff around that. Like, if you ever want to deep dive on the real story behind that and how they tried to pull it off, and, you're not supposed to use kids after nighttime and all the union stuff. And then, because Kathy Kennedy was dating Frank Marshall at the time, and he was heavily involved in it. And they actually shipped her off to Spain so she couldn't testify about it. It was like this whole thing. So she spent all of 1987 in Spain just hiding out and waiting it out. It's also sketchy.
Wow.
It's so sketchy.
Yeah.
And nobody was ever held accountable for it. But if anybody's listening, I would definitely check out the footage of the Twilight Zone helicopter crash if you want to see some shocking stuff.
Yeah, I don't need to see that.
So on to Message from Space.
Message from Space. The message from space is the space nuts. Yeah. So essentially, like as Sam said, we've got these
Liabe seeds, they're called.
Yeah, and they are literally walnuts.
They are just walnuts. There's nothing special about them.
They are just walnuts. Yeah, they look exactly like walnuts, but they glow. Yeah. So I should mention we watched this on Tubi.
Missed the old
And I
Tubi
should
logo.
mention that we did not need subtitles, but Tubi provided them this time.
Yeah.
So
Good job.
thanks. Yeah, it wasn't even subtitles. It was more closed captioning than anything else, but still it was there.
Yeah, it worked.
Except that when, some of the titles come up, which only happens, I think, like twice, they're not
A
translated.
lot less frequent than Virus. Let's put it that way.
So there's two of them, Governor's Fortress and Ria Front Headquarters.
Wow, nice.
And that's really it. Because, I do my translate.
Always count
Google
on
Translate's fantastic.
Always count on you for doing your homework. I appreciate it.
Oh, there is a planet Mirazaria as well. So
yeah, so this takes place. It starts, and you sort of get this idea. There's this planet Jalusia, and it's on the verge of death. And there's these weird sort of disheveled monk people that are living on the surface, and things aren't going very good for them. And
but they're good because they wear plastic wreaths around their head.
Yes, they definitely they're all dressed from the January Christmas sale at Rite Aid.
Yeah, but they are they're good. They're peaceful people who have been invaded by Rockstar, whatever his name is.
Yeah, Ruxika, but the
Ruxika,
his minions or the whole collective is called the Gavanas.
Right, but Ruxika is responsible. Emperor Ruxika is responsible for this. Him and his mom. And we should point out that they have silver skin. That is never explained.
Mm-hmm.
It's significant because Prince Hans shows up later, who is of the same race, and he does not have silver skin.
Yeah, maybe that's what makes Ruxika, because technically Ruxika is Ruxika 12. Actually, his credit is Ruxika X11. So,
really,
yeah, maybe they got more silver over the years. But so we find out about these Lyabi seeds that the Lyabi tribe talks about 8 heroes are going to rise up from the space nuts, or the space nuts are going to find these 8 heroes and bring Jalusia back to what it used to be. That was what it's
going to save them.
Yeah,
is what it's going to do. And it doesn't.
Yeah, Princess Emeralda, she's like the prince.
Spoiler alert.
No, it doesn't. Princess Emeralda, she is the princess of, I guess, Jalusia. And she's told to follow the seeds and return with the soldiers. And there's this other soldier named Roko who goes with her. And basically they go off on a mission with these seeds, and they're kind of letting the seeds do their thing, and they're just following along, hoping the seeds will find the people that are going to save their planet.
Yeah, so the seeds go out, and then, she and Roku get onto their ship to follow them from behind. And we should point out this is a sailing ship.
It looks awesome.
That they get on. It's a space sailing
space
ship.
Pirate
Again,
ship.
I don't know what it is with the Japanese and their spaceships that look like regular ships, but you can see the Yamato there is just a normal battleship.
Jason's holding up another one of his Blu-rays.
Star Blazers was exactly the
Captain
same thing.
Harlock.
And, Macross, I think, was too.
Captain Harlock too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't understand what their fascination is, but
it looks awesome.
It's kind of cool
looks
nonetheless.
super awesome.
Yes, it does. So yeah, they go off, and like there's massive sails on this ship, and it's funny because the scale of the model looks a little wonky at times. It just doesn't look that big.
No.
Like you think you can maybe hold about 12 people, and that's about it.
And then it'll cut to like Emeralda, and she's like piloting the ship from this like giant cabin with the wheel and stuff. You're like, wait a minute, this is a lot bigger feeling.
But they have these giant poles that they're using to adjust the engines and stuff, and then it's like a typical ship steering wheel.
Yeah.
It's quite funny.
Yeah, it's a big clash of technology. Somehow the wooden pirate ship
straight
wheel,
out of Sea of Thieves.
Yeah, totally. The wooden pirate ship wheel made it all the way through space as a design point. Yeah, so we go back inside the Gavanis like evil tower, and Ruxia, his mother, shows up in a wheelchair, and it's a cool looking wheelchair. It looks like, do you ever see the Coffin of Darkness from Voltron, where they used to send the monsters down to Earth? These flying space coffins, they're kind of like meant to be covered in like an organic like bone and skin material.
No,
No, guess
but
not.
Voltron's a little after my time.
Yeah. So
a little bit.
Anyway, her wheelchair looks like that. It's super rad. It's cool looking.
Yeah.
But
Professor X would be jealous.
yeah, she doesn't really believe in her son being able to pull this off. She's not super stoked about him, or I don't know. She just doesn't think he's.
Oh, she's a typical Asian mom, right? Like, son's not good enough.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. He's underperforming as this evil ruler, and she thinks she can do a better job, even though she's in this weird space coffin wheelchair.
Yeah. So, so she's basically egging her on, but it's, he doesn't really take the bait for the most part.
So the ship flies out, and because the planet is being ruled by the Gavanis, it has to get through their defenses. And there's like there's kind of like a firefight and like some explosions and stuff as the pirate ship is trying to leave the planet. And there's some good miniature stuff here, some good explosions, some like good lasers. It's cool.
I like the bad guy spaceships. They got sort of this 5-prong shape to them, and this energy comes out of them, and it's kind of cool.
Yeah, and there's a really cool like classic, over the top of the camera model shot of the Gavanis ship trying to chase down Emeralda's pirate ship, and it like flies over the top, that slow droning space ball Star Wars
to give you an
shot.
idea of scale that this is exactly. It's a giant ship, and it's exactly what you'd see in Star Wars.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's why a lot of people think it's a ripoff of Star Wars, but I'm pretty certain Star Wars just ripped that off from the same thing that these guys ripped it off from.
Yeah.
And what that is offhand, I don't know. I'd have to do a deep dive on all the things that are inspired by it.
I'm sure there's some 2001 in there.
2001's definitely does that with the Discovery.
Yeah. So here's where I get a little confused. We're introduced to Maya.
And she's a passenger on this like Starliner, essentially, right?
Yeah, or it's like a luxury private Starliner.
But the thing that confuses me is like she's a passenger on this luxury liner, and she sees these space fireflies out the window, and she gets all excited and wants to go see them. And the ship captain's like, no, I can't. Your dad wants me to get you home or whatever. So she like tries to take the wheel or something at one point. She tries to take the stick and she can't. But then that's when our two ne'er-do-well sort of cowboy space guys come in, right?
Yeah. So this is Shiro and Aaron. But I was confused here because she's like, oh, look at these space fireflies. Like, let's go get them. And the captain's like, no. But then it just kind of cuts to Shiro and Aaron in these little like hot-rodded fighter sort of spaceships. I didn't really know if she was looking at them thinking there was fireflies.
Well, because they don't show us the fireflies here. They do later, but they don't show us this time. And I was just like, I was really confused.
Yeah, it was a little strange sort of cut. I didn't really understand what it is. I'm glad it was confusing for you as well.
No, it was as well. It wasn't that clear because we don't see them. You know who she reminded me of? The girl, Firebird 2115.
You're right. And the coveralls, completely.
Yeah, the voice is really similar, and she's just sort of excited in the same way, and doesn't care. She just wants to have fun, and she's very similar to her.
That's so funny.
To the point where for a brief second I thought it was the same actress, but it's not. But so then we see our guys, and they immediately start getting chased by the cops, or a cop.
Yeah, this guy's really cool. He's this like looking like 1960s highway patrol looking guy with like open face helmet, aviator glasses, and he's kind of like giggling as a pursuit, and they're laughing, and clearly there's some kind of thing where this is a common. They go through this daily almost, like they're like, oh it's a space patrol, and then they're like, let's see if we can shake him, and they start like racing essentially. I should mention that Aaron is played by a guy named Philip Kasanoff, and this is his very first movie, but he went on to be a big TV guy and is still working, like Chicago Hope, ER, CSI.
Good for him, man.
All that stuff, and he's currently in the new Equalizer. So,
all right, I was happy for him, and now you've annoyed me because I love the original Equalizer, and I don't mind the Denzel Washington ones, but I tried watching the Queen Latifah one. I gave it like 6 episodes. It's just a typical CBS procedural. It just does not work for me.
Yeah, I never saw any of them. I just knew that people liked different versions.
The old Edward Woodward series.
Yeah.
And
As far as
the Denzel Washington movies are fun, but they didn't need to be the equalizer.
as far as like Denzel Washington goes, I'm more of a
Virtuosity kind of man.
thank you. Exactly what I was gonna say.
How did I know? That's throwing the Russell Crowe.
Yeah. Dude, that movie has a great twist with the robot arm and everything in the end. It's a really, really good movie.
Don't remember a damn
No.
thing about it. I'll need to watch it.
He manages to hunt Russell Crowe down in the VR world because he tips off and says that, hackers will leave a trace. And there's a sushi restaurant with an emoji that's a smile, sideways smile. And he points above the sushi store and he's like, sometimes they would use a parentheses and a colon to show a smiley face. Movie's great, dude. It's such a good movie.
Yeah, well, it was before anyone knew what an emoji was.
Or Russell Crowe.
Well, that is true. Yeah, it was the first time he came out back when he was still thin.
Yeah. Anyway, now he's Russell Crowe.
I really enjoyed The Pope's Exorcist. I haven't seen the new Exorcist one that he's in,
Oh.
but The Pope's Exorcist is a fun
I haven't
movie.
seen. I meant to watch it.
He's got an insane accent. It's great. Drives around on a Vespa. Like he drives from Italy to Spain in a
Oh
Vespa.
God, it's just what I need. Russell Crowe Vespa road trip.
Anyway, sorry.
Shiro and Aaron, who become pretty big players in this movie, they're just kind of tooling around in space, and I still am confused. Maya sees supposedly fireflies out our window, and then we just cut to Shiro and Aaron flying around like goofballs, and I wasn't sure if it's meant to be like she saw them and thought these were space fireflies because they're off in the distance tooling around.
No, definitely not, because later on, like she agrees to help them if they go catch space fireflies.
Right. Okay. Yeah, you're right.
So
it's
yeah.
just a weird
But
cut.
no, they're tooling around, and she's really excited by him, and she wants the space liner to keep up with them, kind of thing.
Mhm.
So the part I don't get is later on, like she's flying this thing herself, like it's her ship. The pilot and the other guy are nowhere to be found.
Yeah, she just
Like,
decides to start using it for some reason. She doesn't say how. They don't turn it over to her. I guess it's her dad's
Nope.
ship, so it's just like whatever.
But after they land, it's just like they're gone, and it's
Yeah.
hers.
Space cop who's chasing these guys looks like a 60s highway patrol. He's got an open face helmet,
Yep.
aviators, and he's kind of cool. He's having fun. And it feels like this is something they've done before. This is like this game that they have every day or something, or whenever it is. Like in Firebird 2015 AD, like every weekend they would go out and they would meet up and do this run. They mentioned something about, or Aaron or Shira mentioned something about, okay, like, let's set up for a chicken run. And the chicken run is where they dive towards a planet and dive through the atmosphere and to its surface. And at the very last moment,
I need to stop you there and clarify. I don't think any of these planets have atmosphere. All the atmosphere, but space does. So
yeah,
like in this universe, there's air everywhere. And then there's just these planets, and there's no atmosphere differentiating them at all.
dude, you're right. And that is very much proven when the space firefly hunting comes out.
Yes. And they go swimming in space.
Yeah, it's pretty obscure. So they dive down to the planet's surface, and at the last minute, they pull up, and then they're flying along. And again, miniatures look cool. They're kicking up dust. They're flying through this canyon, and the space patrol guy loses them. He can't hang with the chicken run, so he bails out, and they basically live to fly another day. And they're like laughing about it, and it's just an introduction to them being goons and hot rodding around space, I guess.
Yeah, I mean they're just like ne'er-do-wells. They're good guys, but they like to have fun, and sometimes that fun's a little naughty and dangerous.
Yeah, and then after they lose the space patrol guy, they crash.
Because they've been hit by space nuts.
This movie is so weird, dude.
Yes, it is.
And
They both find the nuts, and they're like, "What's this? What's this?"
yeah, they're walnuts.
Yeah.
They're just walnuts, and then they
Just
start
walnuts.
glowing. Yet? Did they glow yet? No, they just
They don't glow
no.
yet. They're just nuts. And these guys are supposed to be from Earth, so you think they'd know what a walnut is, but they're just confused by what these things are.
Yeah, so they're putting out the fire on their ships, and that's it for that scene. Like you just hear that the walnuts crashed their ship for some reason, and we leave them, and they're just they're just marooned.
Yeah, and this is where we jump to the general, right?
This is where we meet Garuda.
Yes, General Garuda.
Yes,
General Garuda,
played by Vic Morrow.
really love his robot to the point of where I have to question his relationship with
And that was Beba 1.
Beba 1. He loved that robot. It was essentially his robot manservant, and I guess he loved it. He loved it so much that he gave it a Viking funeral in space.
He's like jettisoned into space.
Yeah, he launched a rocket, and they, it's like he's something he shouldn't be doing because there's some soldiers that are basically saluting it. He's got like all the soldiers are out there in formation saluting this rocket ship as it launches, and they're muttering to themselves like, if he gets caught, he's like in deep trouble. Like this is really dumb. Sure enough, as the rocket's going up, yes, one of the Joint Chiefs of Earth calls him like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Well, you made me get Beba 2 robot because my other robot was a great companion, and you made him she said he was obsolete, so I gave him a funeral." And he's like, "What? You burned resources on this?" Yeah,
he's so cool, man. Like he looks so cool in this. He's got this big coat, this big shearling fur like collar on it.
That's the thing. So yeah, so he gives he tells the other general that he's tendering his resignation effective in the morning. And Beba 2 comes along and brings him like, it can only be described as a pimp coat and hat.
It really is. And it looks cool, dude. Like it looks so cool.
It does. It's brown. It's not, doesn't have like a faux leopard print or anything. It's just brown with like a fur collar, and it's a pretty cool hat. And he just proceeds to go out and get really, really drunk.
Yeah. So Beba 2 shows up, and the only way I can describe what this robot looks like is if you were to think of what would be a companion robot in 1970s sci-fi Japan is exactly what this thing looks like.
It's a bigger Tweaky from Buck Rogers.
Yeah, it's got the air conditioning duct arms,
yep,
and the eyes and the dome head, the whole deal.
Except it doesn't go beady beady beady.
Dude, I grew to really like this robot. It's my favorite character in the movie. Yeah. By the end of the movie, I was rolling on the ground. He had some good gags. It was I was surprised. I like this robot more than R2.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, R2 has a lot of personality for no dialogue. I mean, sure. Beba 2 gets to be able to talk.
Yeah, you're right. That does elevate it. Yeah.
Exactly. So that gives it an unfair advantage.
We go to a cantina because Garuda is going to go get sauce now with his new robot buddy. And this is great. The music is playing. People are dancing. This is this is better than the Star Wars cantina scene. I was all over this, dude. This
looked like something you would. This to me reminded me exactly of an early Buck Rogers episode.
Yeah, that's exactly what it felt like.
Like the Gil Gerard series. It just, the costumes, the music, the everything. It's so heavily 70s disco inspired. But with a space twist. It's wild, dude, and
it's so good. And that was my point earlier, saying this movie's vibrant and it looks good. And that's what's missing from the Star Wars cantina. And I know because Star Wars is a little more subdued in its color palette, this movie really makes you feel like this is a space cantina I want to go to.
Well, it's Studio 54 is what it is in space.
Yeah, right. Just as a little tidbit, out of all the people that are extras in this scene, there's somebody playing cards, and it's Chris Isaac.
Chris Isaac?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I didn't catch that one.
No, he's uncredited.
You don't mean the musician
Yes,
Chris Isaac?
the musician Chris Isaac.
Really?
1978?
I did not see him. Did not notice.
He's 22 years old.
And I worked on the Chris Isaac show.
Dude, you should have went up to him and been like, I loved you in Message from Space. Beba 2 here has one of his great lines. He says to Garuda, like, don't get too smashed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he picks up his drink. So the Garuda picks up his drink and he says some snarky comment back to Beba 2. And there's a walnut in it.
Yeah, which makes it taste like scotch, apparently.
That's right, because he says, this doesn't taste like Mills-area. It tastes like scotch.
Yeah. It's like, never mind the fact that this walnut like came out of nowhere. The bartender's like, no, I didn't put it in there, but doesn't offer to get him another drink or anything. Yeah. This is the days before people were dropping shit in people's drinks too, but still, because this wasn't subtle. There's like this big ass walnut. It takes up half his glass, and he's just like, and he proceeds to drink it anyway because I guess it's alcohol. It's sterilized it.
And then we're introduced to Jackie, and he's like this sideshow carnival swindler kind of guy with a round hat.
He's Huggy Bear from Starsky and Hutch.
Yeah. Now you were talking my language. I would have also said that he's also dressed like the chest burster from Spaceballs, but either way.
Yeah.
He gets into a fight with this guy named Big Sam, and there's this whole thing about money owed. And
well, Big Sam is playing cards, and he wants him to go get his other money, the whatever, I'm trying to think what's the word I'm thinking of. Basically he's a gangster.
Yeah,
right?
He's like a loan shark, a mob guy.
Yeah, and he just says, go get my other money, and then Sam's like lent it to our ne'er-do-well space cowboys.
Yeah, because then
essentially.
weirdly enough, Jackie goes into the kitchen of this nightclub, and Aaron and Shiro are working there. So they work at this same restaurant.
And yeah, these two guys are working in the kitchen.
And then Jackie's like, where's the money? And then you kind of get an idea. And then Aaron and Shiro say, well, we spent it on our machines. It's a weird word to use, but you realize that that's their spaceships. They've used it to hot rod their spaceships or something.
They call these things machines, and they do that a lot. So eventually you kind of clue in. So I assume they spent the money to fix them after they crashed with the space walk.
I assumed as well, but I would take that as being... Maya comes along and finds them in the kitchen as well. Like, she knows them. I don't understand. Like,
yeah, she kind of knows them. And then they're like, hey, and they know she's got a rich daddy.
Yes.
And they're like, hey, you can give us the money we need. And she's like, sure, if you catch me some of these space fireflies, because they're so beautiful.
That's what it comes down to. They're working in the kitchen, and she's like, well, I'll fix your spaceships and pay off your debt if you come and get space fireflies with me. Aaron says, well, it's better than being killed by Big Sam. And then they just take off.
They just leave. Like, I guess they don't need
done
these
with
jobs.
their shift or whatever. Yeah.
Dishes are done.
And then we cut to space again. And now there's another race between Aaron and Shiro and the Space Patrol.
Just because he shows up again.
But he crashes this time.
It'd be like when Ponch, slides out on his bike or whatever. It's been a long time since I've seen Chips. It might be a bad example.
I'll take it, dude. Completely take it.
There's got to be a time where he's chasing him and he spins out his 100%. Bike. It's gotta
I was
happened.
Just waiting for some gulp where you're like, well, actually, in episode 13, there's an oil spill. And I was
No.
Aaron and Shiro are ripping through this asteroid belt, and I guess Maya is with them now, and the Space Patrol is on them.
This is where they go swimming for fireflies.
Then they're putting on these outfits, which don't look very...
Well, they're not even outfits. They literally just put something over their mouths.
Yeah, it's just a little rebreather. Yeah.
Rebreather thing. And then they go out and they move around in space, and they're doing swimming motions.
And you got to say, these are all locked off shots, and they're completely suspended, not moving. They're just spinning on the spot.
They're on wires, and they're just pretending to swim. And,
as much as I liked this movie and said the VFX looked good, this was the part where I was like, this is pretty bad.
Yeah, 1978. Come on. We know you need a spacesuit.
Yeah.
In space. So that's why I said there's no atmosphere on the planets. It's just what space is.
Yeah.
But I guess it's really thin where they are, so they have to have a rebreather. But they certainly don't need a pressure
To be
suit.
fair, 9 months later, Alien came out. So
2001: A Space Odyssey came out 10 years before.
This is a little bit of that Saturday afternoon Disney vibe.
Exactly.
Like we saw in Firebird 2015 AD, except it just had a horrible turn. It's very lighthearted, very chipper.
God, Firebird 20. I forgot about the attempted rape scene.
Nobody expected that based off that movie poster at all.
That was the Spanish Inquisition of that movie, man.
Yeah.
Cut that
Shiro. Yeah, well. So Shiro says the engines on the ship aren't from around here. That was a weird comment about Maya's spaceship.
No, because this is when they see the sailing ship coming.
Oh, I've skipped that. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. So the ship.
Yeah. So this is where they see that coming in. And that's where they're like, well, this doesn't look, we've never seen anything. Like, what is that? So that's what gets them to go on the ship. Like, Maya's pissed off because they can't find, basically they try to catch these space fireflies, and they're like snowflakes. Right. They just sort of melt in their hands, and they can't seem to catch them. And she's like, well, you better if you want me to do any of this stuff for you. And then they see the princess's ship.
Yeah, that's what happens. Emeralda shows up.
It's coming straight for them.
Yeah, Princess Emeralda and Roku are on the space pirate ship floating through space. Talk about coincidence. But maybe it's the space nuts.
It's the space. They're following the space nuts.
Space nuts.
I guess we know of 4 of them at the moment, right? There's 8 total, and at this point we have 4 because
we got Garuda.
Jackie's got one. Garuda's got one, and then our space cowboys, whose names I can never remember.
And now Aaron and Shiro and Maya are on the space pirate ship, or on Emeralda's space pirate ship. Shiro is saying, wow, the engines from the ship aren't from around here. That's it's almost magical or something, the way it's working.
Because they're from the Andromeda Galaxy, 2 million light years away.
Seems like it. 2 million light years back in time for a wooden pirate wheel.
Yeah, well, no, but I mean that's what they said that a bunch of times, right? Like they're like, why is this our problem? You guys are 2 million light years away. Who
Yeah.
cares?
This is where they're interrupted, and the Roxia shows up. The Gavana spaceship shows up in hot
'Cause they were
pursuit,
chasing him.
and I guess Aaron and Shiro and Maya don't really have time to do anything else, and so they just flee on the pirate ship with the rest of them because now they're just on the run.
I think they get back to their place basically, right?
Yeah, because they're getting attacked, and the miniatures are awesome here again. And then the Space Patrol guy shows up. He's like basically Porkins every time.
Yes. Yes.
He's just repeat.
That's a really good
repeat
example.
Porkins. Yeah,
Except he's got more lines than Porkins.
yeah, he does.
Yeah, so they make their way back because I mean there's some really abrupt sort of transitions in this show. Like they make it back basically to their hideout, and they're there with the princess, and they're talking, and it's all 5 of them now because Roku, not the streaming service, is there. So the 5 of them are talking, and that's when we discover that General Garuda is like passed out in their back room. Baby 2, they're like Baby 2 is like smiling or spying on them. The general wakes up, and so he comes out because he's got a nut too. And they all talk about these things, but then they're like, "Whatever, we can't help." He's done with the military. He's given up. He's the only one that's really got any army experience. And he's like, "You need a whole army for this, and you don't have one, so there's nothing we can do. You guys should all just go."
Yeah, that's right. Because Garuda's kind of shitty because he's like, "Look, I can do this, but the people you're picking here have never even been in a battle." And he talks about Aaron and Shura saying that like these guys have done.
And so therefore they can't help you. And the other 3 guys are like, well, this is 2 million light years away. Who cares?
I think it was this time I just started laughing to myself. I was like, this whole movie hinges on a space walnut.
Yes, not 1, 8.
8.
So yeah, so they basically all tell the princess and Roku to take a hike.
Yeah, they send her on like
you're on
a
your
vision
own.
quest.
Yeah. Meanwhile, like Aaron has supposedly fallen in love with her because she tore off a piece of her sash and gave it to him because he was cut. He bumped his head or something, right, when they were escaping. And she's like, "Here, take this." So he falls in love with her because she gives him like a piece of cloth.
Yeah, he is simping on her.
Well, that's all it takes, right? I mean, she's pretty. So yeah, he's now in love. And he's got that great 70s hair.
Yeah, dude, I had some Travolta vibes from him a couple times. I was like, yeah.
And their outfits are very much like something you'd see in Space Battleship Yamato, or like these, which was we knew as Star Blazers, or Macross, which is what Robotech was.
Yeah.
Like they have those white leather jackets.
Yeah, the jumpsuits with the straps on them. Yeah, definitely got the Macross vibes.
So,
yeah.
Oh, exactly. That's they're totally modeled after that. So, but yeah, so he gets his head cut at one point, and she gives him a sash, and then everyone's like, "We know you're in love with her." it's like, what are you guys, 14? Yeah. So they go on their way, and this is when everyone like falls asleep and then have nightmares. Well, you don't know it's a dream, but he's like, he's walking along, and all of a sudden, like the Gavanas are all there, and the light comes on, and boom, they're there. And he's like, we're going to kill her in front of you because you love her. And I'm just like, what the F is going on here? Like, this makes no sense. And then he wakes up from it. And it's like, oh, it was a dream.
But then the others.
And right after he wakes up, the other 2 are having the same
dream. That's right.
But a version of it that they're in together, and they both wake up stilted. So these guys realize like they should have, because they've thrown the walnuts out the window.
Yeah.
Right?
They literally, this weird cabin on some weird planet, this little wooden log cabin. Hikiroku is the guide, and he's taking Roku up this mountain and that's when Emeralda stays. But this is like vision quest, I guess. And there's this really cool shot of him hiking up this mountain, and he starts to get sick. But he dies. I can't tell. But then
basically they need to get somewhere, and this little old lady tells him that her son will guide him there. Meanwhile, she spikes his drink.
Yeah, and this is
and the idea is because she's trying to kill Roku so that her lizard son can marry.
Well, this is a great bit actually, because it's like a Hansel and Gretel like kind of cabin on the planet. Yeah. They go on this hike, and then like 30 seconds later, Emeralda is like, "Where is he?" And then they return from the hike, and the witch is like, "He's not coming back." You're like, you didn't even give him like a day to be hiking. So she just like cuts him around the corner and knifes him or something. But then, yeah, she explained, she's like, oh, I want you to be the bride of my son. And Hikaroku is this figure in this like cloth, like burlap sack. And he like reveals and he takes his hood off. And it's an awesome creature. He looks like a Down syndrome creature from the Black Lagoon.
Or I was thinking like, well, the Down syndrome, like Sleestak from what's it? Land of the Lost.
Great, dude.
But yeah, it's just like he's this lizard and she says like he was born on Pluto, like because he was born there, this turned him into this lizard creature.
And he looks so funky looking, dude. Yeah, it's a great moment actually. But then he has a whip that's a laser. And then he just starts attacking Princess Emeraldo.
Well, because the mom's like, go do what you got to do to him or to her. And so he pulls out the whip and then it's like, what the?
But right at this moment, where like the tension's high, that's when Roxia and the Gavanis soldiers just show up and kick the door in and they blast the witch and they blast him and then they take her hostage.
They take her, and just before they leave, this is the part that made me crack up the most, was as the ship's flying away, it blows up the house.
Dude, I laughed at that so good. It's like one last FU. So like think of like a giant model spaceship taking off, and there's this weird little cabin on a space planet in the woods. And it like completely Independence Day White House is the place, just vaporizes it. It's this tiny little shack. Dude, I was laughing so much.
Like, there's no reason to do it whatsoever, but other than the fact it's like, yeah, well, fuck you, we've already killed you, but here you go.
Yeah. It's a great F
like they're flipping the middle finger at them as they fly away.
Yeah, I thought that was super funny. Now we just cut to like a party, dude. And it's a full-on like disco party, and there's like a space dreidel spinning on a table. Everybody's there having a good time. His music group, like people are just having a good time. Aaron and Shiro like partying. I was cracking up too. It feels like it doesn't even feel like a space party. It just looks like some 70s party. Yeah. And so at this party, they're all just grooving and then Maya is just like, hey, we should combine our machines. And that'll help.
She wants to make Voltron.
Yeah, that's exactly what she's doing. And she comes up with this idea about wanting to do that.
Well, they're like, no, we're not going to. Because she wants to help them, right? She wants to go back and she wants to help these people. And the other two guys are like, no, like we've moved on. And then meanwhile, everyone knows Aaron's in love with the princess. But they're all like, no.
And then Roku just pops up out of nowhere and he's all busted up. And then he's like, I'll never forgive you, die. And then like he doesn't do anything and they cut and he's in a med bay.
So Jackie, like this old woman, I guess, was going to pay him so that he could pay back Sammy. And so he turned on Roku.
That's what it was, the double on the hike. Yeah.
Yeah. So Roku comes back in the back. But meanwhile, these guys have already kind of decided, with the exception of Aaron, that they're going to help. And what I love about it is because they got the broken window that they threw their walnuts out the first place.
Walnuts.
There's some space crew guy, or there's some crew guy like hunkered down on the outside of the window, and he just kind of lobs these things in for them to catch. It's just like the two of them because Aaron's doesn't come back to him.
No, Aaron's doesn't, and he has a great line. He's like, "No, you don't believe in these silly nuts. A nut is a nut," he says.
Yeah. But this is where they start to glow finally, right?
Finally.
Yeah. Now you know there's space nuts.
Maya gets upset at everybody and she just like storms out.
Well, because she got a space nut at this point, right? So she wants to help, and because she was already like decided she was going to try and help, and now she's got a space nut.
Oh, that's what it is.
So she's number 5.
Right. I think this is where Maya's one starts glowing. And then we just go back to planet Jalusia, and the Roxia ship, the Gavana ship, arrives, and Emeralda's like prisoner. And she's marched to the base, which looks good. These sets look really cool inside the ship.
Yeah, they are pretty cool.
And she meets Roxia at this point to try and do a deal. And Roxia asks her to just surrender all of Jalusia, like turn everybody over. It's going to happen either way. Just do it now.
She basically says we would rather all die.
She's just like, no, we're not doing this.
Because he's already destroyed the planet essentially at this point, right? Like they've already said it's basically been wrecked.
Yeah. This whole thing would give me Jendiki vibes, by the way.
Yeah.
So then they brain scan the witch, and a hologram shows like a deer in the snow, and Roxia sees like visions of beauty, and he's like all this like it's this weird hologram, and he's shown all these like it's just like nature photography.
Yeah. And suddenly he has a hard-on for Earth.
Yeah, and then he's like, "That's it. I must build my empire. That's where we're gonna go." And he says, Earth will be the only suitable place for my palace.
Never mind that the fact that it's like in another galaxy.
Gavanna, you gotta remember, it's a whole planet, and then it has rocket engines on the planet, and he just lights them off, and then the whole planet just starts flying towards Earth. It's like the size of a moon, but it's a spaceship. It's really wild.
It doesn't have to make sense. Huh?
So now the Gavanna ship is barreling towards Earth with its rocket engines. But there's an insert here that's like a narration, and this happens twice in the movie. And
yeah, we get this random voiceover.
It took me out of it. It was a really weird thing. It was something that was like a Nat Geo sort of voiceover. And they're like, there's Earth defenses have detected the Gavanna and sent fighters to destroy it. I don't know where this came from. It was very out of place for this movie, even though the movie's quirky.
No, they sent it says they sent their 3 strongest ships or whatever.
Happening. I felt like there were some turrets and there was some stuff blowing up, but Earth didn't fare too well. They were no match for the Gavannas.
They weren't. And this is where Earth is they've got to get General Garuda back because he's the only one who can do this. So
yeah, because it's there's a lot of stuff blowing up. It's like a 4-minute scene of miniatures just exploding and crashing down. And
yeah, because they launch fighters. And this is where I think where the Space Patrol guy dies.
For the 5th time.
And they launch fighters, and then the Emperor's just like,
he's just like, we defeated the space fleet. And he's like, towards Earth, continue. And they just keep flying. So at this point, you just know that Earth has no chance. And then there's another narration that pops up again, another Nat Geo thing, very strange. And he's saying that Earth assigned a new chairman or defense minister.
Oh, because the original one resigns because of the failure.
And this is hard to tell if this all goes down within a day or years, because it's a very weird sense of time. I don't understand it, but the new minister who's appointed now travels through space to find Garuda. And then he ends up at a bar, and you're like, how much time has actually passed here? Doesn't make sense. But Garuda is there with Beba 2 at the bar, and he's just sauce. He just doesn't care. So the guy's name is Noguchi, and he tells Garuda, he's like, I need you to go after Roxia. And clearly Garuda's just been drinking at the bar all day. And Noguchi, the defense minister for Earth, said there's only 3 days before the Roxika destroy Earth. And he's like, I need you to go and buy them more time. That's all it is. He's just like, I don't need you to stop this. I just need you to go there and try and talk to them for a little bit. And Garuda's like, why me? And Noguchi says that he used to call Garuda Don Quixote.
Yes.
And he said he was the only one who would go out in the world and take out a giant with a lance. This was such a Japanese quote.
Yeah.
Garuda doesn't comply. He just keeps drinking. He's like, no. And he said he buried his career in orbit with Beba 1.
Yes. At this point, I want to say is it could have been more believable if something that the military did caused the death of his wife or something.
It's a cool robot. Dude.
I have to question again his relationship with his robot because he, and he obviously really likes Beba too.
Beba 2 is a great robot. I'm with Garuda on this. I think, I get it, dude. I'd be upset too. He takes another drink, and then his space nut starts glowing in his whiskey again, or in his Milka-Zed or whatever it's called, but the space nut makes it taste like whiskey to him. And he kind of glances at the glowing space nut in his drink, and he kind of has a change of heart. And now he's just off to the Gavannas, and Beba 2 agrees, and he's putting on his old military suit or his flight suit or whatever. And he's putting on this.
Yeah, he puts on his
this
uniform.
cool silver outfit. He looks cool again. He always looks. Vic Morrow looks cool in this.
Well, it's the future. They got to be silver, as we learned in Firebird 2015.
It's great. It's just another.
2015.
Instead of a house coat, it's a jumpsuit. But he looks super cool.
Exactly.
Beba 2 sees Garuda in all of his outfit and getup, and he salutes him and he says, "Hot dog master." Beba 2 says, "Hot dog master." I don't know. The context of the inflection's all weird, but it made me laugh.
Yeah, every now and then things don't translate in this movie.
Yeah, this whole movie's worth watching just to see this robot Beba 2 say, "Hot dog master." Kind of got me. here we randomly cut to Aaron and Shiro and Maya, and they're kind of out in the desert and they're just working on their spaceships.
Yeah, Jackie and Maya are working on it because they're basically trying to build their Voltron.
I just think it's funny is they're on this planet, this surface of this planet, and Jackie's driving a 1969 Volkswagen kit buggy. It's like a full-on like 1960 late 60s like dune buggy kit car.
Well, they're in a not quite rock quarry, so
I got to talk about, if you're going to talk about kit cars in science fiction movies, I cannot go past the Mars Police in Total Recall. They actually pull up in a boonie bug. Probably don't know what a boonie bug was, but it was a short-lived mid-60s fiberglass kit car van on a Volkswagen chassis. For somehow we make it to Mars, and we've got bars and prostitution and mining, but also we brought boonie bugs all the way there. I thought it was super funny, but you got it.
So Aaron's like upset because he's just like, he loves May, he knows it, but he refuses to accept it. Everybody else apparently knows it. And again, it's just because she gave him this piece of cloth.
That's all he's clinging on
she
to.
has shown zero interest in
it.
It
Wasn't even her panties that he gave her. It's like,
no, it's just tore off a piece of her
not
sash.
even space panties.
So there's no space panties for his space pants. I guess they finished building their Voltron thing because we cut away.
So Aaron and Shiro and Maya take off in their Voltron version of their spaceship, their hot-rodded ship, and something happens to Maya's necklace. Like she's wearing one of the space nuts around her neck, and it detonates or something, and then their ship goes out of control and they crash like on this like red planet.
Well, it was her space nut was in her necklace.
Yeah.
And she had to wear space nut, and it goes crazy and it causes them to crash.
And then a knight like on a horse shows up, and now there's a sword fight between him and Roku. This is kind of awesome, actually. Right. There's like sound effects and
except
light.
Roku's in rough shape, so he can't really do it. But
it reminds me of like the Lopan Egg Shen Shadow Warrior fight in Big Trouble in Little China. Like, it's cool. It looks really cool. But then they realize that the knight who's trying to kill Roku on this planet they crashed on also has a space nut. And then they become friends and they're like, hey, will you join our mission?
And then that's when May suddenly goes, well, that's why the space nut went crazy and made us crash here so we could connect with you. And he's like, I think you're right.
And then we go back to Gavanis, and Garuda is there, and it's been 3 days. They haven't made a deal yet, and the Garuda ship is approaching Earth further, so he hasn't been able to delay them.
Garuda gets mad and accuses one of Roxio's guys, like, why are you laughing? And he's like, I challenge you.
This is a cool thing because they're in like the big like emperor room on the Gavanis ship, and there's a throne and everything.
So they have to turn their back. They have to take, it's typical French duel kind of idea. They have to take 10 paces, turn and shoot. They each have one shot. They get to about 8 steps. The bad guy turns around and shoots Garuda in the arm. And we're like, oh no. And then Garuda takes this next 2 steps, turns, and aims. And the guys are like, no. Basically, he's acting like Jackie now. And it's like, don't kill me. And Garuda decides not to shoot. And that's when our emperor like basically executes him.
This is cool because it's like build up. You're like, oh, well, he's going to do it. But Garuda still goes through the motions and still does the full distance and does the stuff.
He stops. He takes 2 more paces and then
he's
he
a
turns
total
around.
badass.
It's
cool.
really cool.
And this set again is awesome. It's like this really royal feeling. This like red carpet, these big gold beams everywhere, all overlooking space. It's a cool set.
Almost looks like it was in Flash.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then that's when Garuda's like, we basically just need more time to surrender. Our leaders need time to explain it to our people, and we will surrender. And we just give us a little bit more time and we will. And that's when Roxio starts.
Yeah, he's like, no, I see through your shit.
Nice try. I don't buy it. You got till tomorrow.
Yeah, and he says something about, he's like, the Earth's too pretty to destroy, but let's give you an example of our power. And then he just turns the gun and just nukes the moon. He just shoots like 2 rockets at it. It's like he's
just completely destroys the moon. Like there's barely dust left over. It's
it's not a big deal because it's a hologram anyway, but sure.
I told you it's a battle station, dude. It's an ancient.
Well,
alien
that's the only reason it doesn't spin. So
it spins, but okay.
Oh yeah. So then he just gives me an ultimatum. He's like, okay, well, you got to surrender tomorrow, or we're really going to destroy Earth. And so this is in the last 10 minutes of the movie. Now, finally, the stakes are high. Like, this whole movie is taken for them to get, because we don't care about these other planets. We don't care whatever.
It's taken us 100 minutes to get to this point.
Yeah. And so we're like, okay, well, now we understand what's going on. And Garuda's getting dressed back in his like cool space outfit. And he tells the chairman, because he's like, okay, the negotiations have failed. And he tells the chairman, he says to Beba too, he's like, tell the chairman Don Quixote has returned. And he gets dressed. It's awesome. And then he like aims out of the ship, and then Jack jumps out of it in a parachute in space.
Yeah.
And so now he's in a parachute and he's like flying like down to the planet. But then May calls for a chicken run operation.
Well, this is what, so they're all flying back towards the planet for some reason. And then they split up, except instead of missiles, it's just, Aaron and Shiro's ships. Yeah. So they separate, and then they do a chicken run maneuver, and then they land.
They're trying to find the rest of the Jelusians and the wrecked space pirate ship. And so they're running around the surface, and there's like a pond, and there's like these old ancients that are doing this dance with their plastic reefs on their head. And they basically, the idea is like, okay, you guys get on this ship and get off here, the elders, to save them. And Aaron and Shiro are going to do like a trench run to destroy the Gavana ship, because there's an exhaust port that's 10 meters wide, as they said.
Yes.
And now they have to go and like blow it up. But
at one point I wanted to, like Luke to say, it's like, I used to,
Womp rats
or whatever.
They're no bigger than 2 meters wide. Yeah. And so there's this,
no, I know.
There's this pond on the surface of the planet. None of this makes sense for anybody's listening this, by the way. This movie is visually great and stimulating, good to look at, but yeah.
Oh yeah. So like, speaking of last week's episode where you were talking about a good movie to put on projector,
this is it.
Wall,
Yeah.
This would
super
be fantastic.
Because
this would be fantastic.
They're looking at this portal in the ground. It's a pond that the elders are all standing around, and they're showing them holograms and maps. And again, I was like, damn, this is where the Jendiki portal came up. I was like, this is the same thing out in the middle of nowhere, this like pond where there's like a ritual around it. The whole thing, like the Jelusians live on this planet, but the Gavanas have taken it over and turned the planet into a spaceship. They agree that like to destroy the Gavanas, we have to destroy the planet. The Jelusians are like, we can let our planet go as long as these guys die. And then
which is the irony of it, because these space nuts were supposed to be able to save their planet, and now they're willing to give it up to just destroy their enemies.
They're going to destroy their planet based off some glowing walnuts.
And all they're going to do is save the women and children. And
so they put them on the space pirate ship that we saw at the very beginning that the Princess Emeralda was piloting. They bail everybody on it like a life raft, and they just yeet it out into space. And now they're like ready to go and destroy the planet just to get rid of the bad guys. This is the moment, because Garuda says, I figured out their defenses. The thermal tube is only 10 meters in diameter. And Aaron and Shira say they can do it. And they're like, we do that flying all the time, And so this goes back to the first time of them flying in this canyon or whatever. So Garuda says, like, maybe that's why the Lyabi seeds chose them, the space nuts. He's like, now he's like, he's not shitty that he doesn't have all these soldiers. He's like, oh, now I understand why these guys are being picked, because they're really good pilots in tight spaces, I guess.
And again, reeks of Star Wars, but again, I swear, I don't think they're ripping off Star Wars. I don't think they intended to. I think it's just a bit of a coincidence going on. Because I think the only blatant place where they ripped off Star Wars was in some of the translation names and the music.
No, exactly. Which is all in post, you know. So it's like they've
exactly. So it all came afterwards. It was just before
tried
they
to update it.
Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. Yeah.
There's a great shot here where Beta 2 has a giant hunting rifle. I don't know why. It's
Yes.
awesome.
Well, it looks almost like a weird, like long musket.
It's so cool. And I was like, what? But now
but it's what all the Jerusians have this. This
but Beta 2 has one, and he's like a midget robot too with a claw hand. Like, doesn't make much sense, but his space nut's glowing.
But he's space nuts glowing, and he's on patrol because he's marching back and forth.
Like I said, he's become my favorite character in this movie. I love this little damn robot. I don't know why. Because what happens is a firefight breaks out. Roku, a space nut shows up, and it starts glowing, and it's Roku's. And now they have the 8 people. And Beta 2 is like, do not fear, Beta 2 is here. And he's got the gun. And then instantly his arm gets blown off, like just gets vaporized. And Garuda's like, you okay? Beta 2 says, it only hurt when laugh. And I just lit up for this because there's a great scene in Cannonball Run, the first Cannonball Run, and they crash at the very beginning. They're trying to figure out what vehicle to take in the race. Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise are piloting this boat called the Belly Dancer, and they're driving. It's on a cigarette boat. Burt Reynolds isn't paying attention. He crashes, and then it cuts to them in an ambulance. And Burt Reynolds is in a neck brace, and Dom DeLuise is sitting there, and he's like holding a cast, and he's got his finger in a cast, and he's sitting there, and Burt Reynolds is like, how are you doing, Victor? And Dom DeLuise holds his hand up, and he's like, it only hurts when I point. His fingers in a cast. Also, Hal Needham is in the back of that ambulance, and he's like, you can smoke through traffic like shot through a gun. It's a great cameo. God, that movie's good.
It's just, Hans is basically fighting his way along.
And Aaron and Shira hit the trench in their little ships, and they're flying down, and cool miniatures, cool explosions, the whole thing. There's like blast doors coming down in front of their ships, and they're blowing them open, and it's a really good little miniature sequence. Aaron and Shira get to the core, and they fire their rockets. The Gavanis planet explodes. Roxia's ship crashes in flames, which looks awesome.
It does, but it crashes in flames because they basically kamikaze Roxia's ship. So Aaron, Leia, and Maya, sorry, and the other guy. Maya makes a point a couple of times of saying her nickname is Kamikaze, which I thought was awfully weird for a white girl to say in a Japanese movie.
Kind of weird. Maybe because of broken translation too. Who knows? Yeah.
So they crash their ship, but they eject at the last second
because they're like, "This is our last chicken run," you know.
Yeah, and they're like 1, 2, 3, and they all eject, and then we cut to the ship is going down.
God, it looks good.
And there's so much. They have so many.
There's just so much going on. It's on fire. There's little dirt hits going on. There's explosions. It's like overcranked. It looks like it's shot at like 80, 100 FPS, like as it crumbles down. It's super nice, dude.
It's cool. Again, they put some work into that. It looks fantastic.
And then we just go to Emeralda, and she's like, I want to form a new world. Everybody's happy. Everybody's doing good. And they're all hanging out. It's like kind of the award ceremony in Star Wars, to be honest.
Garuda's talking to his Joint Chiefs of Staff or whatever on Earth, and he says, please come back. We're going to celebrate you. Bring all the Jalusians with you. They have a place with us. And that's when the prince is like, no, we got to go find our own planet. Earth isn't good enough for us.
And she agrees. And she's like, I'll just take all the space nuts to a new planet, basically.
All of them decide they're going to go. Like Aaron wants to go because he's in love.
Except Beta 2.
Sorry.
He has the best line ever because he looks back at Garuda and he says, if we went back to Earth, I get a purple heart. Yes. And he holds up his blown off arm, and it's like this wires coming out of it. And I was like, God damn, I love this robot.
No purple heart for you.
And then Garuda actually reins him in. He says, look forward, better things ahead. Keep your eyes on the stars. Credits roll. That was a charming I love that goddamn little robot, dude. I don't know why. It was good.
Yeah, no, it was like, again, a perfect movie to project on a wall at a party.
Yeah. I'm super glad I watched this. I had a lot of fun watching this.
Yeah, so did I. And I wasn't sure at first because I was like, I think my first note was, am I watching a stage play?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it feels like. Because there's a lot of locked off cameras, vibrant colors where it's style over substance. IMDb score of 4.9.
Yeah, it's too low.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be a 5 point something, closer to 6.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, in the gamut of all things. Yeah. And it's fun to talk about. And The miniatures are great. The effects are great. Some of the music's good. And I think you nailed it when you said that there's some key components that are a little Star Wars-y here, but possibly happened right at the end in post when they realized the shift.
I guarantee it, especially with the music, especially. There are so many John Williams echoes throughout this thing.
Yep.
That are, like, I just wish they weren't there.
Yeah.
Because this could have been its own thing.
No, yeah, because when they're having like at the cantina and the disco party, that's cool music and it's original. And I think you're right, because I think the knockoff Star Wars movie take it down a notch. Like it loses some identity where it's
it's like the horns that the sort of Luke theme from Star Wars. They use the initial part of that over and over and over again.
Not to be confused with horns as James Horner, steel drums from Commando. Steel drum the planet, man.
Yeah, you know what I mean. It's that.
I know exactly what you mean.
Again, Star Wars has become iconic. So in 1978, may not have made the connection, but they should have just done their own thing instead of trying to ride on the coattails. Yeah,
I completely agree. I think it would be more standout now and feel less,
Yeah, it'd be a lot more fun.
Less on the nose in those components. Alternate release titles. Really not much going on here. And the only difference was it was worldwide released as Message from Space, other than the USA, and it was released as Return to Jalicia.
Really?
Everywhere else was Message from Space.
And yet on Tubi, it's Message from Space.
Yeah, so I think it was probably like a home video run, theatrical home video, and then after that, when the second round, they just rebranded the whole thing as the original.
Yeah.
Movie was entirely shot in Kyoto, so it was just all a stage shoot, of course. Yeah. Clearly, they certainly didn't go to space to look for space fireflies.
Nope.
Portions of this movie were actually spliced into the arcade game Astron Belt, which was one of the very first Laserdisc arcade machine.
Oh man, I gotta find that. Gotta find an emulator of that.
1983, this game came out, Astron Belt, which was right alongside 1983, everybody's favorite Dragon's Lair. Mm-hmm. So this was one of the early Laserdisc games, and I guess there's sequences that are intercut, and they must. My first guess would be they just use all the miniature stuff,
probably
the shots. But I'd love to check that out. But I just thought that was such a cool thing. So I loved those Laserdisc games, man.
Yep.
There's one called Badlands, and it came out in 1984. Also, like a Laserdisc one, but it felt like Marshall Bravestar before Braves. There's so many good ones of those there. Mm-hmm. I feel like they fell off quicker than any other in the world of nostalgic games. Like people don't.
Yeah. Well, the problem with the Laserdisc games, it was all about timing, and that's all it was.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, it was an interactive FMV.
Yeah.
This movie, copped a lot of crap about being a Star Wars knockoff,
right?
As we said, we talked about the release date being made and worked on well before anyone had seen it. So, there's just more of a vision of the times than actually it being straight up facsimile of it.
Yeah, I think this movie got hurt by the fact that Star Wars happened to come out and be such a massive worldwide hit the year before. Probably already working on it.
And so they talked about that this was actually a bit more of a knockoff, quote unquote, of previous Japanese movies of this genre.
Like Star Wars is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I just found an interesting quote from 1979 when somebody was reviewing this movie and said that this movie is actually particularly unique in that it features both Vic Morrow and space walnuts.
That is true.
So
Space nuts.
I couldn't find budget info. I couldn't find much else, unfortunately. But I enjoyed it, man.
Yeah,
I had a great time. I liked watching it, and I would recommend to check it out because it's just fun visually. And it'll never pass this way again. We'll never see movies like this anymore. So.
No. And this isn't the sort of thing you can remake either. It's just kind of, it is. It's a product of its time, and just enjoy it for what it is. So.
As always, anything but casino.
This was fun, as always, man.
Yeah, man. It's great. It's a good time. See you on episode 19.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks, man.
Take care.
Cheers.
Bye.
Therefore, whatever appears on the television screen emerges as raw experience for those who watch it. Therefore, television is reality, and reality is less than television.